All right, we're back. So it's been quite a while since our last video, and as the days get longer here, beginning of February, actually it's Groundhog Day today, and your thoughts start turning to spring. And what comes with spring but the thoughts of gardening. And we have been planning our garden for the 2023 season, and part of that is of course getting seeds and thinking about how we're going to do that. But we've always kind of wanted or have been interested in vermicomposting, and we thought that we would try that last year, but we could not find a supplier of worms in the local area here. Nobody would respond, or they just weren't available at the time we wanted them. So we thought we would start early. Now it is still early in the year, granted, but we're going to start a vermicomposting worm bin, and today's project is just that. And we're going to put together a compost bin, hopefully get it started so we have at least some castings and some product from the worms in the summer. And that gives us about 2 to 3 months to get it started. Anyway, we'll show you what we've got collected for materials and how we're going to do this. And we're going to build a worm compost bin. Okay, well, we've got our product here. We've got 2 Rubbermaid totes that are the same size, one for the bottom to collect the worm juice and the one to actually have the worms in there. A little bit of old door screen that I saved from a door that we have to replace the screen on, and I thought I could use it for other things, and it comes in handy today. We've got a block of coconut coir, the worms, a ½ pound of worms that we picked up yesterday, and I don't know what a ½ pound of worms looks like, but this is it. I'll get into it a little bit later. I cut some black PVC drain pipe into 4 spacers to keep the 2 bins apart, and I went through my plumbing kit and came up with an old tap that I saved from a project, a couple of washers just to keep the juice in the bucket, and we've got some food scraps that we're going to put in a little bit later. But I believe this is all we need to get going. So we have a new addition to our mouse patrol. This is Jet, and he is a product of our other cat, Twilight, and it seems like he's interested in worm composting as well. So for the bedding, we're going to be using coconut coir, and we bought this block yesterday at Garden Supply Center, and this is going to be way more than what we need. So we're going to cut a quarter of it off and then start soaking that, and if we need a bit more, we'll scrape a bit more off, but I think a quarter should be plenty for the bedding, and we'll get that soaking, get that started. All right, so we've got a little section of the coconut coir cut off, and here we go. Well, hopefully we've got enough, and that expands to enough bedding for the worms, but I'd be interested to see how much. So I cut off about a quarter of the block. We'll see how much that expands. So the coconut coir that we bought, I don't know if it's organic or not. Well, it's organic in the sense that it comes from a coconut, but the label says that it has these features and pH neutral, and I guess one of the things you want to avoid is unwashed coconut coir because it might contain salt, and you don't want that for your worms. Okay, so we've got this soaking in lukewarm water, and apparently it takes quite a while for it to expand, but we'll get on to drilling the holes in the buckets now. Well, we've broken up the block a little bit so that it gets more water in quicker. And I suppose if you want to take the block out of its wrapping, it already comes in divided blocks, which I guess I should have read the label. But at any rate, we cut it, and the rest of it's still neatly in the package, so you could do it that way too. All right, so change of plan. We're pretty flexible as we build these things. And originally Mrs. From the Woods had 2 of these large bins, and then we said, well, we need something to soak the coir in. And she came up with this, and apparently we have a smaller one, or a half size. And so we decided, why don't we make this one the bottom? And that way we have another big bin for another worm farm if these worms begin to breed. Alright, so we've decided to put the tap on the side of the bin, And we have to bring it up a little bit because of course the bottom of the bin is round and you want it to sit flat on the bin to get a good seal. So we're going to drill it up about 1.5 inches, I suppose, maybe a little bit less, just so that that tap is sitting flush against the side of the bin. All right, so all I got are these little washers for garden hoses, but they come with little tabs, so we're going to try and get that to sit against the tap portion. So we just push it on here, and then we just tap it into. If you've drilled the hole just the right size, the threads will also kind of seal it. Like so. And then I have the threaded portion that I cut off from the project we were demoing, and we'll put the washer on the other side. We've got the tap and the drain installed in the lower bucket. You can buy these taps relatively inexpensively. I don't know how much they are, quite honestly, but I'm guessing around $10 to $15, maybe less. But I happened to salvage this from a project we were on, and we had some of these garden hose washers, and it is about 1.5 inches up from the bottom. Unfortunately, you can't go any lower or else you're into the curve of the bucket. So I had some leftover 3-inch black pipe, and I just cut them into 2-inch spacers. And the idea is that we're just going to put them into the 4 corners of the bin for the worm farm to sit on top of. Now you can use anything. I wouldn't suggest wood, but bricks or whatever. I just happen to have this, and I think this is a little easier to clean. I think the bricks will saturate. But yeah, so the idea is that the worm juice drops into this opening, and when it's full enough, we can drain it out the drain into another bucket to pour around the garden. So this is going to be the main worm farm, and it's already been perforated by a bear that was on the property a couple years ago. And the idea is we're going to drill a couple of air holes all the way around. Of course, you don't want to starve your worms of air. And then in the bottom, we're going to drill a whole bunch of drain holes, and then we are going to make a screen to go underneath the bedding. You don't want your worms to escape, and you don't want stuff in your water, so that we're going to cut a piece out of the screen to put on the bottom of the bin. Okay, we've got our air holes all drilled along the top edge. I just use the lip of the bin as a guide for drilling the holes so it's nicely straight. You can put them anywhere you like. I'm just that way. And we've drilled our holes in the bottom using a 1/4 inch bit. You got to do it on the low portion of the bin so that it drains nicely. So now we're going to be cutting a piece of screen to fit the bottom so that nothing gets through the bottom. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just come up the sides a little bit and cover the holes. So Mrs. from the woods here is breaking up the coconut coir. It's been about 20 minutes now, and we're just breaking it up to help it hydrate a bit quicker. And yeah, it's kind of hard to gauge how much water to put in, but just add or as you go. And it seems to be like it's going to be enough bedding for one bin, so 1/4 of the block roughly. And you don't want this to be too wet, but you also don't want it to be dry. So after about 45 minutes, when the coconut coir has hydrated, now there's still some very small clumps in there, but 1/4 block of the coconut coir gives you about 2.5 inches depth of bedding in a bucket this size. So whether you want more or less, I guess, is up to you, but that's what we're going with. And of course that'll be added to with the compost that we're going to be generating as well. We've got our screen cut. I did it about 2 inches larger than the bottom. Otherwise you have to be an origami master to get it folded nicely in place. But as long as you're covering the holes, the next step would be to put the coir on top of the screen. So I think we're ready for the worms. We've got it sitting in the lower bucket that's going to catch the worm juice. We've got our ½ pound of worms, which I'll show you in just a second, and a little bit of food for them to get started. So we've got some coffee grounds, some coleslaw, and I believe some banana peel and some other fruit peelings. So that should get them started. So here's our ½ pound of worms, and I don't know how many are in there, probably a couple hundred. And let me see if I can find a worm casing in here. Yeah, oh, here's one right here. So that there is a little worm casing, so hopefully eventually we'll get baby worms. I guess that's a sign that they're breeding, which is a good thing. So we're going to introduce them on one side of the bucket, and we're going to put the food on the other, then they'll migrate over and get accustomed to their new surroundings. Worms on one side, food on the other. Hopefully they'll migrate across. So as a cover, an inside cover, I guess you can use newspaper and cardboard or whatever, but I thought we had this these coffee bags that we get from the local roastery. We use it as putting under bark chips and things like that in the garden, and kind of a weed barrier, but I thought maybe it would be good here. So we're gonna wet this down, get it a little bit damp, and then put it on top of everything in the bin. Well, one worm farm complete. So we've got our lower bucket for catching the worm juice. We've got the actual worm farm all created with worms on one side to start, and a bit of compost or food for them on the other side, and hopefully they'll migrate across. But we'll give you a quick update in about 2 weeks and see what happens. We're going to bring it into the house. But yeah, overall cost of this, I guess the bins themselves are not very expensive. I can't tell you what we paid for them, but I'm guessing around $10 a piece, let's say. The tap I salvaged from a project that we were on, and I saw them, threw them in my bin and took them home. So, but if you had to buy that, I'm guessing around $10. The worms themselves were $45 Canadian for ½ a pound, and so that's a cost there. So the coconut coir cost us, I believe, around $35 to $38. I don't quite remember, but quite expensive. But we've got enough for either the garden or 4 more worm bins. And of course, the consumables for the worms is going to be whatever you don't eat, I guess. So the cost of that is free. All right, well, that concludes today's video. I think we're on our way to better gardening. And if you look at the cost of some of these products that you can get at the gardening store, well, I think it's worthwhile to at least start or at least attempt it, because a bag of worm castings for 3 pounds can cost you up to $20 Canadian, and if not more. So I think in the long run it'll help, and of course it's supposed to be very beneficial for your garden, and we're learning as we're going here. So we made a few things up as we went, we changed a few things, but hopefully you learned a little bit and maybe use it for your own worm farm. But we're glad that you could join us, and hopefully you'll join us again for more videos coming soon. And if you like this video, we would love it if you would subscribe, like, and share as usual. So we'll see you again on the next video. Thanks for watching.